Hello devotees, as someone who has a ton of skill issues in Genshin, I started a Zero to Hero series, where I spent exactly 1 month maining a specific character every day until I mastered them. So far, I did pretty good with both Yaoyao and Layla already, making a 2 shrine in their own right. And we went even as far as being able to clear the Spiral Abyss with both of them. But this time, I might have played the hardest character so far out of the 2 I mained in the past. And I can say for sure, it was definitely a challenge. In this series, I raise my characters from whatever level they are all the way to level 90 if needed, and use them in my team against just about any overworld enemies, domains, and even bosses that I came across in these 30 days. As you can tell from the title, I mained Faruzan for the past month. The reason why I chose Faruzan is that she is actually a free character in Genshin's version 3.6, and I also have an animal-only series, so I can also get to learn how to play her, which will help immensely with my ongoing series. I tried out different team comps that you guys suggested in advance, and built her as both a DPS, sub-DPS, and also the premier animal support that she is. Here's how I brought my Faruzan from 0 to hero in 30 days. So on the first day, I started off by farming a giant Dorito boss in Sumeru for Faruzan's essential materials. I actually haven't put my Faruzan in the party just yet, so I used my Raiden comp to deal with the boss really quickly and defeated it. But as always, we got 2 boss drops from the game, but I'm already too used to it. Although you could say I became an emo, so after that I just quit the game. Just kidding, it was getting late so I just logged off for the night. On day 2, I started to work out on which artifacts and weapons to put on my Faruzan. I got a lot of comments telling me that Faruzan needs a lot of energy recharge, and because of that, I chose to give her my Favonius Warbow, which has a lot of energy recharge and a weapon passive works pretty well with her, being able to generate additional energy particles once she crits. I currently have her at C0. Since most people are probably getting their first Faruzan as well, I decided to challenge myself and leave her at C0 for the time being and try her out this way. So I leveled up Faruzan up to level 19, and as always, I'm saving my remaining EXP for her to level up naturally. I took my Xiao to fight a giant Dorito boss to see how fast I can clear, and I was doing okay damage, and we were able to defeat the boss before the boss went into hiding. After obtaining the materials, we got 2 Dorito drops again. But on the bright side, we were able to ascend our Faruzan for the first time, and even got her to level 39. On day 3, I brought my Faruzan's One Punch team to Mondstadt to hunt for my prey. This team was recommended to me, so I decided to try it out. Since we still needed both weapon and character essential materials for Faruzan, we went to farm for some slimes and helichos. We also went to farm some ley lines with the same team. I was still getting used to the rotation for my team, but we were able to dish out some good damage against the enemies, and clear the ley lines. I spent most of the day using this One Punch team, and it was pretty fun. Being able to deal solid damage and one-shotting the weaker enemies was pretty satisfying. On day 4, I continued with my One Punch team and decided to farm Faruzan's essential material from the Dorito boss, and to see how our team fared against it. I started off with Faruzan's burst, then followed up with Bennett's burst to buff my characters. After that, I just normal attack with Hazel to gain my punch stacks, and finally dealt a punch, which did a pretty good amount of damage. After I followed up with Hazel's burst, I was able to take off half of the boss's HP, so that was pretty good. Eventually, we were able to get our burst out again, and finish the boss with this last punch. Our efforts were rewarded, and we finally got our first ×3 essential material drops, so I decided to finish day 4 off on a good note. On day 5, I put my Yoimiya on a team to try and level her up alongside my Faruzan. I went to hunt for some Eremites in Sumeru in order to get the drops needed for my Faruzan. This was a team that I just threw together last second, because Yoimiya was just there to get EXP for defeating enemies, and also helping out with my animal team by applying Pyro to Swirl. I was able to gain EXP slowly, and my Faruzan leveled up to 60 after defeating a few of the enemies. But we still needed more silk drops until we could ascend Faruzan. I just continued on my hunt, and with both Sucrose and Kazuha, we were able to keep the enemies staggered, and they weren't able to do anything. After that, we farmed enough silks to be able to ascend Faruzan again, and leveled her up to level 69. I spent the rest of the day farming for more Eremites, and got a decent amount of silk drops from the enemies. Our Faruzan also got enough EXP to level up to 70 just by defeating these Eremite enemies. And after that, I ended my day 5 here. On day 6, I gave my Faruzan some emblem artifacts, just so she has more energy recharge, and can also deal more damage with her bursts. I even leveled up an ER stance for her, and it turned out as an okay piece. I leveled up my Favonius Warbow to 70 as well, and increased some energy recharge for my Faruzan. With that, I ended my 6th day just by upgrading my artifacts and weapon for Faruzan. Nearing the first week of maining Faruzan, my team rotations definitely still need some work, since I'm still getting used to her. On day 7, I went to the desert and decided to warm up against the mini Doritos before taking on the real deal. I'm trying out a team with my Wanderer as a DPS, with Bennett, Faruzan, and Kazuha all buffing my Wanderer to see how much damage I can do. So with this team, we were able to defeat the mini Doritos, and we quickly move on to challenge the boss. My rotations were still a bit scuffed, so by the time my Wanderer was attacking, my Bennett's burst was already gone. I was still able to do around 30k charge attacks when I crit, so it was decent damage despite my bad rotations. Then the boss went into hibernation mode, so we had to destroy the Beyblades on the ground before the boss came back, and we were able to finish it off afterwards. We were also rewarded with 3 Dorito chips for our efforts, and ended week 1 on a high note. On day 8, I started out farming for some Ruin Guard materials for my Favonius Warbow. I used the One Punch team again, with Yoimiya in the party for pyro purposes to make it easier for us. We started off in Liyue and also just went around fighting whatever enemy we came across to collect all kinds of materials. We also went to challenge the island with 4 Ruin Guard enemies, but hopefully with our One Punch team, we'll be able to deal with them without anybody in our team dying, since we didn't have a healer. I basically waited for them to get closer to us so we could just burst the Ruin Guards down. And once 3 of the Ruin Guards came into striking distance, I unleashed all of our bursts. Hazel even whiffed his burst, but it was alright since the Ruin Guards were already dead, and I just had to finish the last one up. We collected all the drops, and went on to repeat the same thing against other Ruin Guard enemies. It was a pretty nice farming session, and we got to try out the One Punch team against some of the easier enemies in Genshin. But I got too complacent, and accidentally let my Hazel die. But hey, at least my Faruzan was able to finish the Ruin Guard by dealing the final blow. So on day 9, I used up all my Aramite Silks, leveling up my Faruzan's talents. I was only able to get my burst up to level 4, and the rest at level 2, since I also used the Silks for my Faruzan's Ascension. I also need to start farming the henna berries that Faruzan needs, so I assembled a team with Tainari because he can spot the Sumeru specialties on a minimap. While collecting the berries, we also went around throwing hands, or in this case, hurling arrows against some enemies. Faruzan was basically buffing my Wanderers against the enemies, and while we were in the process of collecting the berries, we also got some more Aramite Silks in the desert. Wanderer was in my team since using him in exploration was a breeze. Being an emo, Wanderer was able to deal a good amount of damage against the enemies in the desert, so I was able to farm up the materials I needed for Faruzan. In addition, I also found some chests scattered throughout the region, so I was able to get some Primo Gems to do some exploration as well. Anyways, I finished collecting a good amount of henna berries, solved some puzzles, and we even got an luxurious chest in the end. On the 10th day, I went to complete some Sumeru repetition quests. I used the mono animal team recommended to me to fight the bounties, and it surprisingly worked really well. Venti was able to control the enemies, while Jean kept our team alive. Faruzan buffed my animal team, and Wander was able to DPS. Although this team wasn't as optimal, it was pretty interesting, and got the job done as well. Venti was really good against the Aramite enemies because he can just group them all up together, while the rest of my team just finished them up. We got pretty lucky since we only had to fight the fungi enemies as our bounty target, so we quickly defeated the enemies and finished our weekly reputation quest. On days 11 and 12, I was able to ascend my Faruzan's weapon, and leveled it all the way up to level 80. Thanks to our previous days of farming Aramites, we were also able to level up our talents a little bit more. Since I still needed to ascend my Faruzan, I also went to fight the Dorito boss once again. I went with the Wanderer team comp again since it was pretty effective against this boss. And I also got a little bit better at my team rotations now. My Wanderer was able to deal around 20k normal attacks as well, which was a new record for me, so I'm pretty proud of myself for this. With our second rotation, we pretty much finished the boss easily afterwards. So I don't know if I'm cursed or not, but the reason why we're still fighting the Dorito boss was because we kept on getting 2 boss drops. Hopefully I'm taking away all of your bad luck from farming for you. And if you want to keep your luck, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Who knows, you might have accidentally unsubscribed, or maybe this Dorito boss unsubscribed for you, so double check just in case. Anyways, we were able to ascend Faruzan to level 80, and successfully leveled it up to level 79. On day 13, I decided to farm for some more Aramite enemies. This time I'm using the Sunfire Jin team, which consists of Jin and Kazuha to swirl Bennett's burst. And Faruzan was just there to buff the animal attacks. This team comp was really interesting and did a lot of damage as well, and even this Aramite agrees. Since we needed to farm a lot of Aramites for Faruzan's essential materials and talents, we went through most of Sumeru to defeat a bunch of them with this team. So hopefully by the end of this farming session, we can start showcasing Faruzan as the main DPS for our team. Faruzan is honestly pretty great with her elemental skill and charge attack combo. Although I haven't activated her C1 constellation, it was good enough if you have other animal characters with you with crowd control abilities as well. On day 14, we resume our fight against a giant Dorito boss. This time I brought the Gene Sunfire team with us to try to see how it fared against bosses. I was actually genuinely surprised. The constant swirls were doing pretty good damage, and we managed to shave off 3/4 of the boss's HP before it decided to go into hiding. And after it came out, it stood no chance. We even got rewarded with 3 boss drops this time, so I'm happy. But yeah, I wouldn't have ever thought about using these team comps without you guys, so special shoutouts to all of you for recommending the teams. On day 15, I decided to go farm for specters because we always need to stock up just in case another character uses their materials. I brought a Faruzan national team, suggested to me, which consists of Xingqiu, Xiangling, and Bennett as my teammates. Honestly, if you have a team of those 3, they can make anything work. So Faruzan is just there acting as a crowd control character, sucking the enemies together so my other 3 can finish their work. Personally, I think this team is fun, but since Faruzan relies on her charge attack more, we couldn't really take advantage of Xingqiu's burst, which shoots out a rain sword with each normal attack. I did try improvising and used Faruzan as a physical DPS just by rapidly shooting to utilize Xingqiu's burst. But this shows why the other 3 characters work well with just about anybody. But yeah, I used this team to farm the specters around Syria Island and finish my day afterwards. On day 16, I went to fight a Dorito boss again, this time with a double animal and pyro resonance comp, also suggested by one of my viewers. Toma is here as a pyro flex and shield, while Bennett and Faruzan buffs my Xiao. This team is actually pretty strong, and Xiao takes advantage of this since his burst hits pretty hard, so we were able to one-shot the boss without it going into hibernation mode. But I guess the Dorito boss was pretty petty, so I only got 2 drops yet again, but yeah, I became a Nemo after this. The next day, I went around the desert to start farming for the mini Dorito drops. I used the same double pyro and animal team, but replaced Xiao with Hazel. This team was pretty fun, since Toma's burst can constantly apply pyro, which actively charges my Hazel's punch attack. It was pretty satisfying to punch a mini triangle Doritos, and this honestly awakened something in me. We could do some fighting game-esque combos as well, so it was pretty fun. I also farmed some Fatuis while running around the desert, and my Hazel just destroyed them. But yeah, I'm considering this as revenge against a giant Dorito boss, since it kept on giving me the 2 essential material drops instead of 3. And we gathered a lot of the mini Dorito drops that day, and I was finally able to level up another one of my weapons to level 90. On days 18 and 19, I mostly finished up my boss farming. I was using a random team to fight a Dorito, since maybe that would change my luck for the boss drops. And sure enough, it didn't. I decided to take my rage to hunt down some more enemies in Sumeru. So I took my Hazel one-punch team to this place with the 2 Lava Troll enemies. We were able to dish out some respectable damage as well with our buffs, and the fight was pretty thrilling since we might get killed in one hit from the Lava Trolls. My Hazel pulled off a 6-digit damage as well, making the 2 Lava Trolls enemies kneeling to my one-punch team. I also went to farm for some ley lines as well, and summon some Doritos for me to fight. We were still on a roll, and continued to one-shot enemies. But yeah, this Faruzan team is definitely fun to play. On day 20, I went to fight the Golden Wolflord. I stayed with my one-punch team since I wanted to see how this team fares against this boss. Luckily, Hazel is a careless character, so he could destroy the statues reasonably fast, just by using his normal attacks. And once the boss is down, it's time to spring into action. With our punch and burst combo, we pretty much won the battle, and just had to wait for our cooldown to finish off the boss. I got overconfident with myself, and thought this team was invincible, so I accidentally let this happen to me. But on the bright side, I was able to finally ascend Faruzan, and finish leveling her up to level 89. So on day 21, I went to farm for some Ruin Guards again, in order to get more drops. I used the Gene Sunfire team again, but this time I used Xiangling for the Pyro Resonance. We had a pretty solid team that can constantly apply Pyro for us to swirl, and we didn't have to worry about our HP since we could heal as well. So I went to the island with the 4 Ruin Guards again, and they were pretty easily disposed of. We could even tank their attacks as well, and Faruzan even countered attack the Ruin Guards to finish them off. The Sunfire team is actually pretty fun and chaotic as well, but since my Gene was only C3, she couldn't take advantage of the animal shred that you guys suggested. But it was still pretty fun, and I ended off the day leveling up my Faruzan's normal attack talents to level 6. On day 22, it's finally time to challenge the Spiral Abyss. I brought a Sunfire comp to floor 9, but had Layla as a shield. Faruzan actually works pretty well in the first chamber, both as a DPS and a crowd control with her skill. There were majority fungi enemies, so we were able to defeat all of them pretty easily. In the second chamber, there were a bunch of Helichos, but with our animal characters, we could just swirl them together to defeat them easily. With Faruzan as our main DPS here, we did some pretty nice damage, and we cleared this chamber effortlessly. In the final chamber, it was also pretty easy since there were a few fungi enemies, enemies, so we were able to just burst our way to victory. So for floor 10, I brought the Faruzan national team with me again against some fungi and slime enemies. We were able to defeat all the enemies here without much trouble and clear the first chamber. In the second chamber, there were 2 Kairagi samurai enemies, which is probably the first challenge for us, since we'll have to defeat both of the enemies together to prevent one from healing. Luckily, the national team comp is OP, so we took care of both enemies without any problems. The rest of the enemies are pretty easy since we already have a lot of experience against the Eremites for this past month. Finally, in the third chamber, there were 5 elite enemies. The enemies here are only level 85, so it was still a breeze for us to get through, and our Faruzan could burst the enemies down pretty easily as well. In floor 11, I put my Faruzan in the support role for Xiao, and used him as a DPS. Faruzan still does pretty good damage to the enemies here, and we were able to complete the first chamber rather quickly. In the second chamber, there were a bunch of Ruined Drakes enemies for us to fight. Luckily, Xiao's burst was able to deal a considerable amount of damage to the enemies, with Faruzan helping out as well. We had to defeat 2 more Ruined Graders afterwards as well, but we just pogo sticked the enemies to death. In the final chamber, there were the samurai enemies again, so we had to kill them together. Since we had Xiao, this was easily achievable, and we defeated them both. After that, there were some nice soldier things. Even though I don't know what attacks they could do, I just commanded Xiao to go kill, and he did exactly that. But yeah, we were able to finish floor 11 afterwards. So on day 23, I continued to spiral abyss to floor 12. I brought the same Xiao team comp from yesterday, but floor 12 was really built differently. There were 2 neon colored animal combos in the first chamber, and their attack hits pretty hard. On top of that, they were thick. My Xiao had trouble keeping his burst up against the 2 enemies here, and I was messing up the rotations as well, so we only got 2 stars in the first chamber. For chamber 2, we had to deal with a few Helicho Halochas. There were 2 flying types and 1 water types in this chamber, and they were quite annoying to fight against. I tried my pogo stick strat for Xiao, and while it was pretty effective, I couldn't do anything when I ran out of my burst. After defeating the enemies, there were some Eremite enemies that spawned, but I kept getting trapped inside the bubbles as well, so it made floor 12 a struggle for me. Now I couldn't believe what I'm watching. There were a bunch of creatures as well that was summoned, so I ran for my life. But this unfortunate thing happened. I retried the chamber again, but had the same exact result. Afterwards, I restarted the Abyss, but with Wonder this time as a DPS. Everything was good at first, and we were doing a pretty good amount of damage, until this happened. The hit messed up my groove, so I accidentally left the other samurai enemy alive, so he healed up. But yeah, I kinda just quit after this, since I probably wasn't prepared enough for this Abyss this time around. On days 24 and 25, I decided to farm for some domains, and use the Sunfire team again in the Emblem domain. We were able to defeat the enemies here pretty fast, and I actually got 4 5-star artifacts drops as well, although none of them were worth upgrading. I did this domain a few times, and had a pretty easy time with it compared to the Abyss. And eventually, we even got rewarded with a pretty nice flower for Faruzan. Next, I went to the Sumeru Talent domain. I brought out the animal freeze comp suggested by Aozora, which consists of Layla for both cryo application and shield, and Shincho for hydro. This team was actually pretty fun to play with, since we constantly attack with Hazel to take advantage of Shincho's burst. So the enemies here stood no chance. On day 26, I decided to take this team out for a swing. I went to farm the consecrated beast enemies in Sumeru, and it worked really well against them. Because we can perma-freeze the enemies, the buffs Faruzan provided pretty much helped us defeat the enemies faster as well, while the enemies were just stuck immobilized. I said this in my Layla video as well, but she's really an underrated character, and her shield is no joke. But if you guys haven't checked out my other videos about her, make sure to go watch it after this video. Anyways, on day 27, I went to complete a brewing development event in Sumeru. In these domains, I tested out a few different teams as well. I used this Forward Animal Super CC team, which was pretty fun, because I basically sucked the enemies together, and they couldn't move at all. I also used this team suggested by once you Korean, you can't career out, but instead of Lisa and Kale, I used Venti and Nahida. This is basically a catalyzed team, and it was pretty effective in this domain with a lot of enemies. A lot of you guys suggest good teams as well, and I got to try most of them out inside this domain. So special shoutouts to all of you for these team suggestions. And for those of you building Faruzan, let me know some team comps that I didn't try in this video as well, in the comments below. On day 28, I tried out some potential animal-only team comps as well. For those of you that don't know, I do have an ongoing animal-only series as well, so I'm basically trying out my future teams. Venti makes farming the Spectres way easier, and with Faruzan acting as a secondary DPS, everything was a breeze. On day 29, I went to farm this Rainbow Abyss dude. We had characters that covered all the elements, so the fight wasn't as hard, but he constantly put his shield back up, but we were able to eventually defeat the boss in the end. So with the final day upon us, I decided to use what I learned to fight an emo boy. Shoki no Kami. I went through the first phase pretty easily since he was only level 70. And in the second phase, I decided to try punching him while he was down. But unfortunately, my Hazel didn't crit. But that pretty much summed up my luck getting the boss drops throughout these 30 days. So yeah, I became a Nemo and decided to murder the pigeons. It was definitely a challenge for these past 30 days maining Faruzan. While I only had her at C0 because I didn't activate her constellations, she was solid as an animal buffer for me. It made my other characters shine. Hopefully I'll be able to eventually get her to C6. And this past 30 days, I learned a lot about Faruzan that will definitely help me in my animal only series. Once again, shoutouts to everyone that recommended me team comps for this video. And sorry if I didn't get a chance to use your team. The next character I'm planning on maining is Kave, so for those of you that have team suggestions for him, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try them out if I can, and showcase you in my Kave video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to his channel so I won't be a Nemo anymore, and make sure to check out my latest Zero to Hero journey if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.